Good morning, my friends. Welcome to our New Testament challenge. Today I'll be sharing some thoughts and reflections on the Gospel of Matthew, the 15th chapter, today, September 15th. We are in the midst of Jesus' ministry. And so chapter 15 is kind of a mixture of things. We have some healing. We have a couple miracles. We've got some teaching, and we've got some conflict. All these things are a part of his ministry here on earth. And so, and we've got some confusion by the disciples because they're like, Lord, tell us what this parable means. And I find it interesting how that plays out. So at the beginning, he talks about the Pharisees and the scribes come to Jesus in Jerusalem. And they're asking him, okay, they're kind of trying to pin him down. Here is a teacher, a rabbi, who is not playing according to the rules that the authorities have set. And he's not doing the things he's supposed to do. He's not saying the things he's supposed to say. And so they come to him and says, why do your disciples break the tradition of the elders? They don't wash their hands before they eat. Jesus' response, not really an answer, but a response was, why do you not keep the tradition of the elders? And you finagle, you use the law for your own good, where you should be taking care of your mother and your father, you honor your father and mother, but you say, well, I can't give that to you because it goes over here. And whereas you live high on the hog, sorry, pardon the pun, they need taken care of. And he says, you're hypocrites. And then immediately he goes, and based upon that, he goes to the crowds and he says, all right, it is not what goes into the mouth that defiles a person, but what comes out of the mouth that defiles. Now, I can kind of get that. I mean, we kind of understand what this is. I can understand why they would wonder what's going on and how that plays out. And so he has to explain to the disciples, what comes into the mouth, that the food we eat, stays in the body and then exits the body. But what comes out of the mouth is the words that we speak. And the words come from our heart. And the heart can be the center place of anything that's evil and false witness, slander, all that stuff comes from within the heart, comes from the evil intentions. And so that is what defiles us, is what we say in the words we speak. We lie with our tongues. We slander with our tongues. We gossip with our tongues. And so he's saying that's a whole lot worse than any rule that says you can or cannot eat this stuff. Now, again, it's easier to monitor what we eat. It is easier to make sure we don't eat pork, or we don't eat this, or we don't eat that. It's easier, and it's simple, and it's black and white. To monitor your speech is a lot more difficult. But we also understand why Jesus talked about that, because it was so much more important. And then, again, this is interesting. Jesus understood his call from God to go to the people of Israel. He was the Jewish Messiah. And so his understanding of his call was to speak to them. And so he's out and about, and obviously people around throughout Israel knew he was a prophet and knew he was a healer, and so they would come, and the foreigners would come as well. And so there was this Canaanite woman who came and started shouting at Jesus, Lord, to come and save my son. And he ignored her, but she would not give up. And his disciples said, Jesus, make her go away. Make her go away. Father, she's bothering us. And so Jesus turns to her and finally says, I came to the people of Israel. You don't give food for the children to the dogs. And now, that seems kind of harsh to us. Again, it wasn't quite, that statement wasn't quite as bad as we would take it today. But his point being, he says, what I have to give, I am supposed to give to the Israelites. That's who I'm sent to. That's my purpose. But her answer is what really was amazing. She said, but even the dogs eat the crumbs. They get a little bit of something. And Jesus is like, I'm amazed by your faith. You're not asking for everything. You're just asking a little bit. And he talks about, remember he talked about the mustard seed, having just a little bit of faith like a mustard seed. She had that little faith. She didn't want a whole lot of his attention. She just, Lord, just a little bit, heal my daughter. And Jesus says, because of your great faith, I will do as you say. Good stuff. He goes on and feeds many people, and I love this statement. Verse 31, so then the crowd was amazed when they saw the mute speaking, the maimed whole, the lame walking, and the blind seeing, and they praised the God of Israel. At least some points in his ministry, people were praising God for what he had done. There are times when it goes elsewhere, but right there is, I think, probably one of the highlights of his ministry there. What he was doing, they were praising God for, and I know that's good stuff. Then he continues to teach, and here we have what we call the feeding of the 4,000. We had the feeding of the 5,000 earlier, but here he said apparently the people had been with him for 2 or 3 days, for a long time. And he goes to the disciples. He says, all right, I'm starting to get worried for the crowds. I want y'all to get something to eat for them. They might faint when they go home. And the disciples, all they see was the problem. Lord, how in the world are we going to feed all these people? He says, what do you have? He said, 7 loaves and a few small fish. So he made everybody sit down. He broke it and gave thanks and gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them out to the crowd. And when all of them ate and were filled, they took up the broken pieces left over, and there were 7 baskets full. Again, 7, 12, those are some of those God numbers that we speak of. And so it meant that God was in the midst of this, as if we did not have enough evidence, feeding 4,000 men, women, plus the women and children, with 7 loaves of bread and 2 or 3 fishes. But this is another... some more evidence that God was in the midst of this. And after sending away the crowds, he got into the boat and went to the region of Magdala. Good stuff, my friends. Jesus is in the midst of his ministry. There's a lot going on in this passage, so just sit with it and let it marinate. Go back and reread it, and maybe focus in on one of the passages, one of the stories there, and see what God will teach you today. Thanks a lot, my friends. We'll talk to you tomorrow.